Hello, Florida Southern Moccasins. Welcome to week 7 of esports business models and trends. This final week for us is going to be a culmination of everything we've studied with an eye towards where do I see the future of esports going? And with that in mind, where you might consider an esports career. So let's get started. Let me share my screen. So for week 7, what are we going to study? When we're done, hopefully you're going to understand and evaluate the expected growth in mobile esports. This is going to be very much about mobile. The current and future state of gambling and betting in esports. This is a subject that many colleges and universities don't want to discuss, but it's a reality, as anyone who's watched the Super Bowl or any other sporting event is well aware. I have to discuss the impact and potential of virtual reality in esports. I'll save my editorial for when we get there. How big could esports get? An eye towards consolidation in the video game industry, because we're going to see that this is really M&As, as we call them, mergers and acquisitions, have set the stage for what is current, and where things might go in the future is going to be very much a factor of M&As. Possible expanded governance. You know, the elephant in the room is the NCAA, and what's going to happen when, not even if, when the NCAA decides that esports is something that wants to fall under its domain. We will look at the continued global growth of esports. I've always been very much a globalist. I think I told you I had campuses all over the world and would travel all over the world. And if you are someone in search of adventure, someone who's willing to relocate, someone who sees the world as your market, then you want to pay special attention to where esports is growing. And ongoing references to the merging of esports genres, although I'm not going to spend that much time on that. So again, our topics, mobile esports. I want to take a look at compound annual growth rate, because it can be misleading, all right? As I said, we'll look at M&As, Las Vegas style gambling, VR in esports, and the explosion of esports in Southeast Asia and Oceania. So let's look at the evolution of mobile esports, because that's what's really going to impact the industry the most. Mobile gaming is currently the top grossing gaming segment worldwide as of 2021. It's clear that mobile gaming and esports offer a key opportunity for both large and small players in the industry. Esports is a key area to keep an eye on for developers. You see, while classic mobile games like Call of Duty do have a loyal and growing following, the marketing in terms of mobile esports is nowhere near saturated. The cool thing about mobile is that mobile esports games, just like mobile games in general, they provide an outlet, an opportunity for small indie developers who can carve out a niche, can, even if they're a one-hit wonder, so that they stand out from the industry giants that we've been talking about the entire semester, okay? And we're going to see that mobile esports is finding a great deal of success in regions like Asia and Latin America, while also performing well in Europe and in the US. So let's take a look at the platform distribution for mobile games. Now, this is June 2022. So this is fairly recent. And this chart is going to be eye-opening, okay? Eye-opening to you, because it's looking at the total hours watched and the percentage distribution of mobile game streaming viewership by platform. Now, let's start with the most glaring shock, and that is, look at Twitch. Twitch is a minority player when it comes to mobile games, all right? Okay, it had 20.8 million hours watched, but that comprised only 10.7% of mobile game viewership. Instead, what do we find? We find that Facebook gaming had 87.7 million hours watched and 45% of viewership for mobile games, followed very, very closely by YouTube gaming, all right, which was at 44.4%. So we could basically say that Facebook and YouTube were basically, equals in terms of mobile game viewership, as opposed to Twitch. Now, what do you make of that? I'll tell you what I make of that. What I make of that is Twitch is still very much PC gamer territory. All right, hardcore. We've got our PC set up. We're very, LAN dedicated folks. But as a result, we're not that prone or even interested in mobile. Whereas the market that comprises Facebook and YouTube is much more interested, much more available for mobile. So it's definitely saying something about the demographic. And if I'm you, especially if I'm a marketing person, I want to do further research into what's going on here. And by the way, these statistics come to us from Stream Hatchet, which is a pretty reliable analytical firm. And we look at Facebook gaming, PUBG Mobile is the winner. All right. If we look at YouTube gaming, we've got League of Legends Wild Rift that is the winner. And, Royale on Twitch. So this was kind of a shocking reality, sort of a, come to Jesus moment about mobile. Now, the top mobile games on live streaming, again, June 2022, hours watched, League of Legends Wild Rift wins. All right, it experienced an increase. Why? Due to the Icons Global Championship esports event that was held in Singapore. It saw over 2 million hours watched, which is just under half of Wild Rift's 4.2 million total for the month. So already we are positioning this in Southeast Asia. And you're going to be hearing me saying Southeast Asia quite a bit, all right? And then, as we said, we got PUBG, then we've got Free Fire, and the remainder of the games are pretty low there, okay? Pretty low. All right. Is mobile esports the future? Yes. Just as the future of gaming is mobile, the future of esports is mobile too. Gaming and esports go together. With the ease of access, key number one, the provision of gameplay on the go, and the global audience that the mobile gaming industry enjoys, its competitors, right, personal computers and consoles may very well have peaked. Think about some of the announcements that I sent over the course of the term about Dell computers laying off people, that basically PC manufacturers are seeing a significant slowing in their sales. Why? Think about it, okay? Now let's look at League of Legends Wild Rift, okay? LOL and League of Legends Wild Rift. Both games offer the same game with differences. The differences arise in the actual game mechanics, the game presentation, the community, the demographics, and much more. So Riot was very smart about this. Wild Rift is a mobile game that features the full experience of LOL at your fingertips. Meanwhile, the original League of Legends, which premiered in 2009, is alive and well and winning on the PC. So Riot very smartly was there going, well, look, we own PC market, mobile's coming up. We need to take the most popular video game currently and port it over and distinguish it so that it plays just as well, provides just as much of an exciting experience on mobile as it does PC. Riot wins, okay? Now, the once thriving esports industry has fallen on hard times. Yes, you heard me say that. We're now moving into this whole notion of compound annual growth rate. In the same way that everything currently is having some issues, esports is not immune from that. However, the degree to which it is suffering is different than what you might think. Here, as funding sources dwindle, okay, funding sources dwindle, and signs abound that athletic competition via video games doesn't have anywhere near the earning potential investors anticipated. What are we learning here? You're business majors for the most part. A lot of American investment is for short-term gain. All right, we want immediate return on investment. And so a lot of money that was invested in esports, both in terms of primarily in terms of teams, all right, was in the expectation that that compound annual growth rate was just going to go through the roof and they would see an immediate return on investment, very much like the franchising that occurred, okay? Now, the degree to which we have investment firms throwing their money into esports is different than the health of the esports industry itself. So, revenue in the esports market is projected to reach 1.624 million this year. Revenue is expected to show an annual growth rate, this is from 2023 to 2027, of 8.31%. Okay, if it goes at that 8.31%, its projected market volume will be 2.235 million by 2027. Pay special attention to 8.31%, because that's a lot different than what has been promoted previously, okay? And as a preview of things to come, most for mobile esports viewership, total hours watched by region, what are we looking at here? Southeast Asia, Southern Asia, 22.2 million in Southeast Asia, 3.6 million basically in India, 662,000 in Latin America, 753,000 in North America. This is by far a huge market. We're not that prone to esports. We're going to delve into this more deeply, okay? Now, you take a look at what has been projected by various entities. This is Acumen Research and Consulting. Their projection is that by 2028, the US dollar for global esports will be $7.131 million. Now, that's global esports. So, wow, that's really cool. But global esports is different than, say, North American esports. So here is another esports market report for 2027 that's telling you to expect a 15.1% compound annual growth rate. Notice the variety that we're getting here in terms of what's called the CAGR, right? The compound annual growth rate. If we look over here, global esports market worth is now 5.48 billion in 2029, according to Global Esports Market. That's a 21% compound annual growth rate. And according to Fortune Business, the global esports market size is projected to reach 5.48 billion in 2029, a compound annual growth rate of 21%. A little further down, right? According to Technavio, the global esports market is estimated to grow by 3.5 billion from 2022 to 2027 at a compound annual growth rate of 21.81%. Now, by now, I'm sure some of you are like, I got to turn off this episode. I mean, Don, there's too many numbers here. I can't deal with it. Deal with it, okay? Deal with it. This is about the future of esports with an implication about the future of video games. So the good news is, if we view the compound annual growth rate of over 20% as, salivating for us, remember, for the most part, that is a global estimate. That's a global estimate, anticipating the explosion of esports that's going to occur around the globe, which I'm going to talk about shortly, but maybe not necessarily in the US. The US, where a lot of investment dollars are located, they're looking for a speedy return on investment. They're not seeing it. And as these esports teams, as we've seen, develop into conglomerates with a host of players playing in a huge variety of games and tournaments, these teams have got this incredible overhead, which is eating up the dollars. And as a result, they're not making the money and not increasing in value, which is why we are currently seeing what? We're seeing esports teams laying off people, consolidating, and such. Esports is offering a tremendous insight into how business is conducted anyway. Okay. Now, I want to talk about esports and gambling. If you've been to Las Vegas, you've seen the pyramid, right? That's Luxor. Luxor is the home of esports in Las Vegas. It's the HyperX facility. All right. Remember, HyperX is an esports peripheral manufacturer, but it owns, or really runs, the esports arena that is built into the Luxor Hotel in Vegas. Now, only 4 states have explicitly legalized online esports betting in the United States. And there are 4 rather interesting states: Tennessee, West Virginia, New Jersey, and Nevada. Nevada makes a great deal of sense to us. New Jersey does, because they really went hog wild on all sorts of online betting. West Virginia, my neighbor to the south, I'm like, okay, whatever. And Tennessee, kind of intriguing. But let's talk about gambling. The Nevada Gaming Control Board has officially vetted online esports betting, but with a few restrictions. And basically what Nevada says goes. The only fully approved bets are head-to-heads and outrights. What is an outright? An outright bet allows you to make a wager on which team or player will win a particular esports tournament. One can do this well in advance of the esports competition. All wagers must be made before the match in question begins. So right there, you see a major differentiation. With the Super Bowl, you could bet in the middle, right after a play. You could bet. You could bet during the quarter. You can bet on one player. Anything goes, right? That is not the case with esports betting. These caveats, for example, they include declaring that in-game or live betting is off the table. That's what I was just referring to, where you can suddenly start betting while the game is in process. And live betting is off the table, which is the same thing, basically. As are many of the conditional bets that traditional sports bettors are used to, like the spread, all right, and match time. Even with these stipulations, these caveats, these limitations, Nevadans in Las Vegas and beyond still enjoy the excitement of esports betting. Okay. Now I want to talk about virtual reality and esports. So what did we learn from the gambling thing? It's going to continue. It's going to grow. I think those caveats will remain. I do think they will remain, but the gambling, you're going to see a lot more states than those 4. Let's talk about VR, okay? This is another one where the compound annual growth rate has been all over the place, and I haven't believed a word of it. So here, according to Grandview Research, the U.S. virtual reality market is just going to grow at basically a 14.4% CAGR. I just don't see that happening, okay? Head-mounted displays. By 2030, they're looking at, huge amounts. Gesture tracking devices, okay? Those are basically peripherals that allow you to see your hand movements, which has been one of the biggest drawbacks of VR, all right? And projectors and display wall units small. But despite what I consider to be a host of issues with VR, you've got this tremendous aspiration and estimate for how it's going to grow. When it comes to esports, virtual reality really took its motivation from a lot of peripherals. And one of those was a device created by Virtuix, which was founded in 2013 out of Austin, Texas. And it was a pioneer of active VR, all right? Active VR basically means using your whole body to immerse yourself in this virtual world, all right? And they did that by developing the Omni. The Omni is the first of its kind motion platform that enables 360-degree movement in virtual environments. Basically, what you can see here is it's basically like a steel drum. And these players are wearing special shoes that allow them to basically run on this platform without going anywhere. They also have a harness here. You see, this harness prevents them from being so immersed in the world that they run into a wall and break a neck and what have you. So here they are being able to run, turn around. They've got a an HMD head-mounted display on, and they've got the handheld peripherals to move there. When this came out, it was like a game changer, right? Total game changer. Except it wasn't a game changer. Now, Virtuex has shipped more than 3,000 Omni systems to more than 500 commercial entertainment venues around the world, making the Omni the most widely distributed VR hardware apart from HMDs. My question to you is, find one. Okay, find one. I can tell you that many colleges and universities that purchase one or two, they're like, okay, it's cool, but it's expensive. It requires a great deal of work. And they're not used, okay? They're just not used. But it did allow for the origination of virtual reality and esports. So there was this, what came about was called the VR Master League, all right? And the VR Master League occurred in what was called the Echo Arena. And it was highly touted when it came out. You know, there was a preseason championship. There was a double elimination in the Americas and in Europe. It was like, you know, it was going to be the big thing. Now, the most popular multiplayer game. Oh yeah, right. The most popular, unfortunately, was developed by Ready at Dawn and Meta. They this week announced that they were shutting down the long-running free-to-play experience. Okay, according to an official release, service for both Echo Arena as well as Echo Combat will officially end on August 1st of 2023 at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Until then, new and existing players can download and play Echo Arena on Quest, Quest 2, Quest Pro, Rift, and Rift S headsets. What is this telling you? It was a Facebook initiative, originally released back in 2017 on the Oculus Rift. Echo VR has, over the years, yes, cemented itself as one of the most popular multiplayer games available on VR headsets, because it was really one of the few. Unfortunately, the developer, which was Ready at Dawn, right, and Meta, right, Meta is Facebook, they announced they're shutting it down. All right, shutting it down. It's ending, as we said. So, yeah, you can keep playing. They did, in fact, have an Onward VR Master League competition that started in January, but it's not making any money. And it's requiring tremendous amount of investment. And as we've seen from Meta, which I kind of like Facebook better, as we've seen from them, they're hemorrhaging money. They're shutting down divisions that are not generating ROI, especially now. And so their VR, they were the leaders in VR for esports, and they're shutting it down. Now I want to talk about mergers and acquisitions. There's a tremendous and exciting history of mergers and acquisitions that have taken place that have defined basically the landscape of video gaming today. Number one was when Take-Two Interactive acquired BMG Interactive in an all-stock arrangement. Okay. The second big M&A was when Tencent acquired a 93% stake in Riot Games in a private cash transaction. You can bet the owners of Riot Games are living well, right? Number three was when Microsoft acquired Minecraft creator Mojang for $2.5 billion in cash. Microsoft clearly has seen the return on that Minecraft investment and probably is one of the reasons it has whet their appetite to acquire more game companies. Fourth major M&A was when Amazon bought Twitch for $970 million, again in an all-cash transaction. And then number five was when Namco merged with Bandai in a mixed cash and stock deal. So now we have what? We have Namco Bandai. So you see how, as with all corporations and industries, M&As define things. So when you take a look at esports M&A by category, it's included streaming, broadcasting platforms and services, content, news and analysis, event, venue and productions, social community. And it is still the dream of most entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, when they develop a company built around a product, to be acquired, right? To be acquired or to have an IPO, an initial public offering, so that all of a sudden they sell this stock, and by selling the stock, they have a tremendous influx of money, which then allows them to pursue their strategic vision, okay? Which leads us to Microsoft and the Activision Blizzard desire, right? The desired acquisition of Activision Blizzard by Microsoft. Microsoft is attempting to persuade regulators around the world to clear its $68.7 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard, which would be the biggest deal of its kind the industry has ever seen. But there are concerns about its effect on competition in the industry, and in the face of ardent lobbying against the deal by Microsoft competitor Sony. Even the US Federal Trade Commission has said it will attempt to block the deal legally. While in the UK, its Competition and Markets Authority has also expressed skepticism. Now, when you've got two government agencies saying we don't like what we're seeing, that's not good. And frankly, I'm going to be surprised if it goes through. And if it goes through, it's going to be with a great number of stipulations that say that Microsoft's going to need to sell this company, get out of this strategic area. It's going to be interesting to see how that happens. Now I want to cover esports and the NCAA, again, the elephant in the room in terms of governance. The NCAA chose not to govern esports because it considered it pure amateurism, right? But that amateurism, which is actually what NCAA was all about, was amended this year when they introduced the name, image, and likeness policy. Okay, the name, image, and likeness policy, if anything, should have opened the door for esports to become part of NCAA. I don't quite, in fact, the biggest issue is Title IX, as we're going to get to it. So even though the NCAA is still not regulating or governing college esports, the recent directive permits all NCAA college athletes to monetize their name, image, and likeness rights, as well as to hire professionals to advise them. So you could be a high schooler, you could be a college student, and go find an agent, a manager, and or an attorney to start to represent you so that you can start selling your name, image, and likeness and making money when you're still doing these, quote, amateur sports. So basically, the NCAA doesn't know what it's doing. But I think it's inevitable that esports is going to be embraced by them. What does that do to the National Association of Collegiate Esports? I don't think it's going to do much because most of the 240 colleges that are part of NACE, remember, are smaller division 3 or division nothing colleges and universities. So I think we'll end up with a two-tier system like we have the NCAA and the NIAA. Okay. If the NCAA does take it over, what could possibly be the benefit? The presumption is better regulated competition, all right, because the NCAA has experience in all this. Okay. Improved diversity and inclusion in esports. One of the biggest concerns the NCAA has been Title IX issues, all right, because esports is dominated by men. The presumption is, well, if NCAA gets into esports, maybe they can urge, encourage, or threaten schools to take steps to include more women and minorities in gaming. We'll see. The belief that it might ensure the overall well-being of student gamers. I have a big doubt about that. And improving esports reputation and legitimacy. Right now, I would say the NCAA does not improve any sports reputation and legitimacy, but that's Don's editorial content. But these are the arguments that are being made to support NCAA getting into esports. Now I want to talk about the world, okay? We already know that esports is global, right? You take a look at the leading esports teams: Europe, US, Russia, UK, Europe, Ukraine, France, China. It's global, folks. It's global. You're not going to find anything like this for American football. You might find a little bit more of this with basketball, definitely, and maybe with the MLB. I think this is the year we're having the World Baseball Classic and all that. Although most of the players who are representing the countries they don't live in those countries. But anyway, okay. Again, we're seeing in the Overwatch League that it is a international experience, right? We've got China represented mightily there. We've got Canada represented. We've got France. So with esports, it's been global to begin with, as we can see. It's global. I mean, the Call of Duty League is global. We can see here that it's part and parcel of what esports is, what makes esports so damn exciting. And the NBA 2K, again, which I admire, has really set up a league fantastically. It's paying its players, it's providing stipends and all that. And it began as a US league, but in 2020, it expanded to Shanghai, China. And then last year, it expanded into Mexico. And this year, it's expanding into Australia. So as someone who's loved traveling the world as much as I did, I find all of this extremely exciting. So when we look at the global esports market, as we have before, we see that the high growth continues to be in Asia Pacific, low growth in Europe, medium growth in the US. But we've got to delve into that more deeply, okay? So we're going to look at esports around the world. Again, low, we're seeing Central and South America, Africa, and the Middle East, which I'm going to change your opinion of that real soon. High continues to be North America and Europe. I mean, that was mid-level. A high continues to be all of Asia and Oceania. Let's delve into that. We already did this. Okay. Spending on gaming, core gamers versus esports viewers versus fans. All right, what are we seeing here? Wow, Brazil, very big. That's South America. China continues to be very big. Korea continues to be big. Germany, UK, US still spending the most money. So we're spending a lot of money here. It's going to certain people. Here we have potential huge growth, continued growth, although we've got issues with China, of course. We need to delve into where esports is flourishing. So let's do esports Europe. Famous football clubs with the best esports teams. Let's tip of the hat to soccer, football in Europe as being the first to embrace esports. Esports Europe reaches 41 member countries, making Esports Europe the largest community-driven, nonprofit esports movement in Europe and the largest continental esports federation in the world. These are all the countries that are part of ESL, all right, and part of the entire Esports Europe association. So it's basically every conceivable country in Europe. You could almost view it as like the NATO with a host of non-NATO members as well. Now, the highest earning esports countries in Europe before the war was Russia, followed by the UK, France, Denmark, and all the way down there. So in Europe, I view this as opportunity. This is a nice amount of money being spent, but nowhere near enough money that I would like to see. So now let's look at the UK. They speak the same language. Esports Human Resources in the UK has been the leader in getting women involved in esports. They have made a dedicated effort on coming as close to parity as anybody can. And they've done this through the British Esports Federation, which is a not-for-profit. All revenues generated go back into the running of the organization and into funding grassroots esports, which includes running the British Esports Championships. Why? Because it promotes teamwork and communication, develops communities, and provides jobs. The aim of the British Esports Federation is to educate parents, teachers, media, and policymakers and government to the benefit of esports. That's brilliant, right? Working with schools, colleges, and other educational establishments to embrace esports. Because again, British colleges and universities have not been welcoming to esports. So you have a parallel, a distinct organization that's taken this under its wing. So the UK is currently the 5th biggest consumer market for games, but has been behind other territories in esports historically, which is why we have the College of Esports powered by the British Esports Association, which is creating almost a tangential academic program to provide university degrees in esports. Now, you might remember there was this thing called the British Empire. The British Empire declined and disintegrated after World War II and evolved into the British Commonwealth of Nations. The British Commonwealth of Nations has since evolved into purely the Commonwealth of Nations. And the Commonwealth of Nations has embraced esports. And it's been headed up by a group called Global Esports, which is actually Indian, from India. So India, which has always been, low, behind, it's got Wi-Fi and internet issues and all that, has very wisely said, you know what? Rather than try to go head to head with the giants in esports, why don't we basically look towards the member countries of the Commonwealth, of which there are, many that are, lower income, you could almost say third world, but let's work with them on generating interest in esports. Brilliant, brilliant. Now we've got to go to the giant, right? Esports in China. Okay. Esports in China is gigantic. It's got to be gigantic. There are 1.5 or 1.6 billion people in China. Okay. And the research in China has showed that esports competitors have higher rates of engagement and spending than just pure gamers. Okay. We're looking at, esports fans in China, 434 million out of 698 million in Asia. This is as 2021. But the esports market in Asia is 57%, 36% in China, meaning growth, okay? And revenue in China is the largest in Asia. But when we talk about Asia, we've got to look at Chinese Taipei, India, Indonesia, Japan, Korea, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam. We're going to get into that, okay? Big time. So the market size of esports in China continues to grow, but it's growing due to indigenous Chinese content, okay? Very important, because we're going to research that, okay? The most lucrative games in esports, we've said this over and over, is Dota 2. And Dota 2's being lucrative is primarily a result of China. Okay, primarily a result of China. Now, the majority of Chinese gamers are strongly drawn to esports. The Chinese are a highly competitive culture. Even when gambling was not allowed, Chinese would travel to Portuguese, what was once a Portuguese colony called Macau, to gamble. When I would be in Singapore years ago, gambling was not allowed, but they had gambling ships, cruise ships, that were docked outside of the Singapore sea limits, and you would take these shuttles, these shuttle boats, to the ocean liners to gamble. So we can see here that among the Chinese, the core gamer is a pretty large portion there, especially when combined with the super consumer, and that the hardcore PC gamer, not all that much in terms of esports, but we're going to find that in China, mobile gaming is going to win. Okay. And like I said, the Chinese are serious about this. The Chinese government reports esports talent gap, which means that the Chinese government is setting up training camps to train young Chinese young people to become expert in esports. China did not like and does not like the fact that a small country by its standards called Korea is the dominant player in esports. The Chinese want to be number one in everything, okay? And what we're seeing here is from Tencent, a quote by James Yang, we are seeing the rise of mobile esports, influenced by improved mobile hardware and 5G networks. I discussed 5G networks previously and why it's a game changer, and improved mobile hardware, well, you've got one in your pocket, case closed, okay? Now, however, China may also be shooting itself in the foot, which for those of us who are not in the Chinese industry are like, please keep doing it. So PUBG esports may be over in China. And that is because China is a totalitarian country, like it or not. And most games to be in China must go through a process known as localization. Localization means that when games are being made in one free country and published in another, localization is akin to translating a book. Now, when you're translating a book into a foreign culture, foreign language, idioms very often need to be altered. Sometimes dialogue needs to be reconfigured to make sense for the scene in question. All right, that's all expected and normal. Localization requires selecting what speech to put into a game and in what way, which thereby creates an easy opportunity for censorship. But China's market is large enough and the budgets are small enough that Chinese censorship often gets incorporated into games at the development stage, not edited out later for distribution. In other words, if I'm a developer of a video game and I have my eyes on China, I'm working with the Chinese censors to begin with to make sure that the game I develop is ready for rollout in China, and I don't have to be concerned about post-rollout censorship. However, the rules can be very stringent. Some of the rules around what is prohibited are almost inexplicable to foreign audiences. For example, references to Winnie the Pooh. You can't do Winnie the Pooh in China. Why? Because Winnie the Pooh has become a stand-in for Chinese leader Xi Jinping. In other words, to criticize the exalted mystic ruler of China, you can't say it by name. You've got to use a euphemism, and Winnie the Pooh has become that euphemism. So we can't have Winnie the Pooh, as well as small details of female character design. Believe it or not, the Chinese censors are very, they're prudes, right? They're prudes. So it's a lot more about covering up. We don't want to see that much flesh. We don't want to see fill in the blanks, right? Now, these local restrictions can become so onerous that they aren't always worth the effort. For example, Epic Games decided last year to halt production of its Chinese localization of the popular game Fortnite. Why? Citing the difficulties of adapting an existing project to cumbersome censorship demands. In other words, Epic was thinking of porting or exporting Fortnite as it is to China. But the Chinese censors would have so many issues with the characters, with the gameplay, with the environment, that Epic said, forget about it. Even though Tencent, a Chinese company, has become a significant investor in Epic. Fascinating, totally fascinating. Now let's look at the Southeast Asia, because this is where esports is taking off like a rocket ship. Esports is set to take off in Southeast Asia, with the sector hitting only 72.5 million by next year, okay? This is all being fueled by mobile-first gaming. Southeast Asia is expected to race past the rest of the world in terms of esports revenue, while growing at an annual by a CAGR of 20.8%. Okay, and that's by Tencent and Nuzhu. Okay, which means Tencent is looking, where do we invest money in Southeast Asia, and that's nearly double another CAGR estimate of 11.1% for the rest of the world. Okay, when we talk about Southeast Asia, what are we talking about? Vietnam, Thailand, Singapore, Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia. Now, I don't want to scare you off. I've been to Vietnam. They love Americans there, okay? Vietnam, they loathe China. They have every intention of becoming a juggernaut. English is being taught as a second language all over the place. Thailand, the same thing holds. Singapore, English is in fact one of the major languages. Indonesia, English is being taught as a second language. Malaysia has got very good command of English. Philippines, remember the Philippines was a United States colony. All right, we won the Philippines after the Spanish-American War of 1898, and we held it up until World War II. All right, it was a U.S. colony when the Japanese invaded, and then we went back and we freed the Philippines from Japanese occupation, and then it was granted full independence. But the Philippines, English is the second language. Okay, what are we looking at here? The number of esports enthusiasts in Southeast Asia will reach 9.5 million. That was in 2016, with a projected CAGR of 36.1%. It achieved that. Okay, esports revenue growing like you wouldn't believe, again, in all those potential countries. And I have to tell you, the living is easy there. I could go back to Singapore tomorrow. All right, we're looking at market by region. Even 2021, 2026, still a 25% CAGR. What are we looking at in terms of the world? Middle East and Africa, which we're going to get into, is going to grow significantly. Latin America was going to continue to grow. Europe, North America, we still have a great deal of growth to be done here. Okay. Now, Asia 10 games market, take a look. Mobile and PC gamers from 2021 to 2025, this is the expected growth. Mobile and PC game revenue, this is the expected growth. So there's going to be continued growth both in PC and mobile, and the revenue is going to grow. I'd like a piece of that. I don't know about you. Okay. Here, esports adoption rate. I have participated in esports games. This is significant. 75% have watched or participated in esports games in Vietnam. All right. Thailand, 60%. Philippines, 57%. Malaysia, 43%. Taiwan, 38%. This augurs well for growth in those regions. And Thailand, we can look at the market size in terms of money. Basically, these are your slides, right? I'm giving these to you for those of you that are thinking internationally, okay? I want to now go to India. In the span of 3 years, Indian esports organizations, Global Esports, remember I just mentioned them with the Commonwealth Games, has managed to grow from a pet project to securing multi-million-dollar investment deal from venture capitalists. It has now grown into a full-fledged esports organization spanning 3 countries, employing 77 members, 45 to 50 of whom are players. There's 1 billion people in India. So we are just scratching the surface, all right? India's video games market has the highest projected 5-year growth rate at 21%. This is according to 2022 Asia 10 Games Market Report. Notice who's investing in them, all right? Gosu, Lazada, Singapore Airlines, best airline in the world, Razer, Samsung. They see the future there. And remember, in India, English is the second language. And India has taken the bull by the horn and has really promoted India versus China esports. Let's talk about esports in Latin America, the boom of esports in Latin America. You are all students in Florida. Florida is close to Latin America. In fact, it should be part of Latin America. So let's look at Mexico. Mexico celebrates Day of the Gamer. Remember, they celebrate Day of the Dead, right? Day of the Gamer as the capital of esports in Latin America. Now, obviously, it earned that due to the size of its population, its proximity geographically to the US, and for being the regional headquarters of large video game companies such as Riot and Ubisoft. Mexico closed 2020 with 72.3 million gamers, of which 11.1 million consume esports tournaments. So Mexico is a potential and strategic market for the video game industry, and it's a gateway to the rest of Latin America. Here you can see the LVP, which is the League of Professional Video Gamers, and how it brings together brands and industries to promote esports in Latin America. Those of you who have studied Spanish, Spanish is your second language, or maybe it's your first language. If you want to look at tremendous growth, you could look at Mexico, Latin America, and South America to a degree. Here, Optic Mexico, fantastic organization. And you can see that esports in Latin America, when they do their LAN in-person events, they attract people. I mean, it is a celebration. I happen to love Mexico, by the way. Okay. Now, Mexican university esports is starting to evolve like American university esports, which is good news. Okay. And the future of sports, esports in Mexico is just really good. Now let's look at let's go further south, esports in Latin America. This is Latin America here. This is South America here, okay? When we take a look, there's 146 million players in Latin America and the Caribbean. Now, 53.3 million are in Brazil, 13.3 million in Colombia, Ecuador 4.6 million, Peru 7.5 million, Chile 5.9 million, Argentina 11.2 million. My grandmother was born in Argentina, but Sicilians moved there a lot. There is now something called the South American Esports Championship, ironically held in Asunción, Paraguay in 2022. Who sponsored it? Look over here, Global Esports, the Indian company. Basically, the Indian company just moved further east into South America, where it sees tremendous potential. Now, what's the other thing? South America is not part of the Commonwealth of Nations. In fact, the only country in South America that is part of the Commonwealth of Nations is Guyana, because Guyana used to be British Guiana when it was a colony, just like Suriname. Suriname used to be Dutch Guiana. And to beat them all, you still have French Guiana, which is an integral part of France, although a lot of people would say that it's a colony. I mean, how did the French get off scot-free still having a colony in South America? And a lot of it has to do with the speed with which the French allowed the French Suriname citizens to become French citizens. But that's for another class and a whole nother subject, okay? So now we take a look at Brazil. The Brazilian esports audience is exploding, okay? It's grown tremendously by 16% up until 2021, and it's just going to keep growing. Let's talk about the Middle East, because remember, the Middle East was grouped as, low. I mean, it's very low when it comes to esports. You know how much money is in the Middle East? Tremendous amounts. Ironically, it might seem that Saudi Arabia has a well-structured plan to enter the esports industry and is already in action. Clearly, it's one of the richest countries in the world and has a public investment fund that is used to invest on behalf of the government. Saudi Arabia has invested a lot of money in video games and esports because it wants to diversify its economy. It's all been oil, 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 oil. What are we now pushing? Non-fossil fuels, all right, electric cars and what have you. As a result, they expect to invest $38 billion in the future with the goal to make Saudi Arabia a hub for esports by 2030. Now, we all see this as Saudi Arabia, or most Americans do. It's not all Saudi Arabia. The yellow here are the confines of Saudi Arabia. Here you have the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, which in many respects is even more money than Saudi Arabia, all right, and is invested fully in all sports of modern games, extreme games. It's home of the world drone races. This is Qatar. I've been to Qatar. Carnegie Mellon has a campus as part of what's called Education City. There's also Bahrain. Bahrain is an island. It's a kingdom, island kingdom, where the United States Navy has a huge presence. All right, there's Kuwait. All right, there's Jordan. These are fairly, civilized countries. Then you've got Iraq. Nothing. Then you have Iran. I don't even go there. And then, of course, there's Israel, right? This is Yemen. Nothing but problems here. Nothing but problems. But Oman is a very stable sultanate. So that's what the Middle East is all about there. Quarterly viewership dynamics of Arabic channels on Twitch, it's had a slight decrease, but it's still significant and basically untouched. So there have been multiple million-dollar tournaments organized in Saudi Arabia in recent months, such as the Dota 2, significant they chose Dota 2, Riyadh Masters of 2022, Gamers 8 Rocket League, Gamers 8 Fortnite, Gamers 8 Rainbow Six. All these tournaments were part of the Gamer 8 Esports Festival, which had, hold on to your seat, a $15 million prize pool distributed by many esports tournaments. That's a lot of money. The event was sponsored by some of the biggest brands in the globe, such as LG, MasterCard, Spotify, Razer. The Dota 2 tournament had the biggest prize pool of any non-TI event to date. You'll notice, those of you who are involved in golf, the whole controversy, because Saudi Arabia has created basically a parallel PGA and is buying American players and hosting these tournaments with tremendous prize pools that are really irking the PGA. And so we've got a war here between, what's it called, like the LV, if I'm not mistaken, and PGA fighting each other. Well, when you're a team, an esports conglomerate, and you got to make your money by either sponsorships or winning tournaments, and the Middle East is now offering tremendous prize pools, I'm going there. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, speaking in an esports forum that took place in Riyadh, said, "We are harnessing the untapped potential across the esports and game sector to diversify our economy, to drive innovation in the sector, and further scale the entertainment and esports competition offerings across the kingdom." They're doing it. They're doing it. Now, Brazil, as we mentioned, again, became an esports powerhouse, and is also being very good in terms of women in gaming. Okay, and so, Brazil is known as for its fanatical esports audience. The IEM Rio sold out crowds at the Rio Center Arena, 1.25 million prize pool. And the great thing about Brazilian esports players, as well as Latin American players, is their fanaticism. And so if you really want excitement, I would look at them. And so that, folks, I covered a lot of material. Those of you who stuck it out to the end, hopefully I've planted some seeds in terms of what you might consider for a career, not just in esports, but in video gaming in general. I want to thank you for being part of this class. I apologize for thinking we had one more week. So there is no week 7 assignment. Instead, just work on your final business plan. And again, thank you very much for being in the course. Bye now.